Good day, Broker Nation. Lauren Hawkins here, once again coming to you from ThreePoint Capital in Kelowna, British Columbia. I've got the privilege of sitting down today with a new guest, somebody that you may or may not be familiar with. His name is Damian. He comes to us from HVI Appraisals back in Toronto. Welcome, Damian. Thanks for taking some time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Lauren. Nice to meet everybody.
Yeah. Hey, you and I connected about a month ago, I guess, back at the CMBA Ontario conference and trade show. We were side by side, and we hadn't had the pleasure of meeting as of yet, and kind of hit it off. And we had this kind of a chat about what's going on in the Ontario appraisal space. I've done a number of interviews out west here with Lawrence and Walker, who is a industry partner of yours. So
Correct.
maybe just give everybody an idea of who HVI are and sort of how you guys operate, because you are a little different than the standard appraisal company out east.
Yeah, we're definitely a different animal, and a lot of appraisal firms, they do work with all types, A side or traditional lenders, alternative market space. We just focus on the alternative market space, and that's kind of our niche.
Okay.
And there's not a lot of companies that are like that. So our target is just that space, and we're pretty much accepted across the board.
Yes.
Um, so a lot of brokers or mortgage agents feel comfortable with us, and a lot of lenders obviously feel comfortable with us, but they can order with us, and then they have more flexibility because our product is so widely accepted in that space. And we don't deal with the traditional, I guess you want to call them, appraisal management companies,
Correct. Yeah.
like a Solidify or an AS, and we're kind of our own entity. So we're a little bit different, and yeah, we like being different. It suits us perfectly.
Well, it gives you that flexibility to sway with the market, sway with the conditions, and the lender's expectations and requirements, right? So, one thing that's drawn us to you guys. We've you as one of our preferred appraisal partners in Ontario, and now you have partnered with a few firms across the country, correct? Maybe tell everybody a little bit about that and who those partners may be.
Yeah, our president and owner, Gord Somerville, he's done a great job at well, he created a portal where people place orders, and it's been one of our, I guess, big components of success. The mortgage agents like it. It's very
Yeah.
automated, and in kind of expanding, it needed a refresh, and we want to make it a place where mortgage agents could come and order for across the country. Especially during the pandemic, people were moving away from the bigger cities
Correct.
and kind of moving all over the place. So he set up a network of firms across Canada that we partner with. And so when the portal comes in on the home value, we distribute the work to the appropriate appraisal company that, again, deals with the same types of lenders that we deal with, to kind of streamline the process. So no matter where it's going, we'll find someone to take care of it versus just saying, too bad, we can't do it.
That's great. A great addition to the marketplace, definitely for the agents and brokers across the country. It's awesome. So let's just kind of take a step back and talk about what did last year look like for the Ontario real estate market.
The market last year was interesting. It was up and down. And coming out of 2022, we'd had those interest rate hikes, and
Yeah.
we saw the winter, or that Christmas going in. It was very laggy, very slow. And then come February, there was talks of, hey, maybe we might be lowering interest rates. And we saw the spring market really start to boom, I would say, in March.
Yeah.
And I also have my real estate license and was participating in helping people buy homes at that point in time. And there was lineups. Come April and May, there was lineups for homes again. We saw a substantial increase in pricing from that point in time. But then in June, I think they raised the rates instead of lowering the rates, and that had a big impact on people's perception. So all those people that were on
Yeah.
the sidelines saying, "Hey, you know what? Maybe things are going to start going down," and they were all jumping in. No, they went up, and then from the summer, we saw a cool off period. well into, I would say, November, December were kind of the low point of the year for sure.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of homes go for a very discounted price, in my personal opinion, and then kind of represented the low of the market going into 2024. So
So,
it's kind of like up and down, kind of like
yeah.
almost a full correction. I think we're still down from last May. We're still down like a few points, again, generally speaking.
And sort of that leads sort of in that next. So what's HVI, project for the remainder of this year? I mean, obviously we're well into the year and we're,
Yeah.
coming on the summer months. School's almost, school's only got about another 3 weeks or so, and then kids are out. So what's that look like for the Ontario market in HVI's eyes for the coming months?
Well, the spring's been great. I mean, it's not like, I think we're so used to it being like insane, where
Yeah.
it goes up 25%, and like we're not doing 25% anymore, which I think is a better space to be in terms of longevity.
Yeah.
But the spring market's up. There is optimism that we might get a trend going downwards for interest rates. Interest rates will dictate kind of what the marketplace does, but
Hmm.
people are really riding on kind of what the Bank of Canada is going to do. But generally speaking, I think we're going back to more traditional seasonal real estate. During the pandemic, we did see differences. The market was busy in December. It was busy in January, when people were stuck inside and they were on their phones or on their computers. And now we're starting to see more consistency, with the spring kind of being the apex for increasing values. I think the summer will just kind of ride nice and easy, again, depending on what happens with that interest rate. And if we do start getting lower and going into September, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a nice little bump upwards. Again, depending on the language that's used and kind of what everyone's thinking. But September, traditionally, everyone's back in school. And if there was going to be a rush before Christmas, it would be that
It would
September,
be then.
October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, given what's going on, and it indicated, sort of some of the ups and downs that we've seen over the last, is there anything specifically that uh, our agent partners out there should be aware of when reviewing reports? Is there any sort of, you know, aspects of properties when you guys have been out there, reviewing that, should agents should make it, a priority to review before submitting to their lender?
Yeah, I think, there's different levels of agents out there, and a lot of us, just at this day and age, we want everything kind of quick, and a lot of us
Yeah.
like to look at the number and go, "What's the number? Does it fit the ratio?" And that's it. But I mean, you know better than anyone. There's a lot of parameters that go into a file before it's accepted, and
Yeah.
I would at least look at the pictures, at the very least, if I was a mortgage agent, right?
Yeah.
Because pictures say 1,000 words, right?
Yeah.
Is it a rooming house? Who occupies the house? We've had deals go out the door, and it says tenanted upstairs and tenanted downstairs, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden we get a call afterwards. It's not tenanted. I don't know what you're talking about, right? And it's like, well, when we were there, this is what was told to us. And if there is going to be some kind of fix on what is actually happening,
Yeah.
read the report. Who's occupying the property? Are we stating that properly? Because that does impact
Yeah.
the condition of the property, might impact the rate that a lender may want to lend on. If it's in worse condition, that could change what they're willing to offer.
Exactly.
And then the pictures will kind of show you what kind of deficiencies, again, that might be a deal breaker. Is it knob and tube wiring, or is it something else that a lender may not like? Everyone's got their own kind of take on what is acceptable and how
Yeah.
they're going to package that product, depending on the quality of what's being sent to them.
Yeah. One of my things, even today, I mean, in my career, one of the things I always looked at when I looked at a report, I would skip everything and I'd go right to the comparables, and I would look at the adjustments made. And for me, sort of anything, you know, approaching double digits, meaning, 10% or greater adjustment, I really focused on those and said, what's going on and why those adjustments are there. And if I felt uncomfortable with it, then the next thing would be I pick up the phone the appraiser or the managing partner of the firm and say, hey, listen, I've got a file, I've just got some questions. These adjustments are quite outside the norm. can you give me a little feedback on that? So I can make some notes prior to back in my, credit union days as retail lender before I sent a file in for approval to the GM or into the credit group, or in this case, making sure that, I say to the team here, have a look at this. I've already had a boo at the adjustments. Here's some notes from the appraiser. Let's kind of proceed with that. So that's sort of one angle that I'd always
It's a
kind
great
of
point.
used
Yeah,
in my career.
the total gross adjustments, I don't know if anyone knows where that is on the report, but
Yeah.
at the bottom of each comparable, it says that, and it kind of gives you an indication of like how difficult the file was, how many
Ex-
comparables were used, and that just gives you a perspective as to what's going on.
yeah.
And a lot of the times there will be, I'm only worth $1 million, and we look at the gross adjustments, and it's like 1%. It's like, yeah, you're worth $1 million. Like I didn't even have to
Exactly.
adjust this versus like you're talking when you hit like 25 or like over
Exactly.
20% adjusted. Now we know the appraisers have to manipulate the file to like, to get that range down.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, you know, Going into this summer market, what's typically a lead time broker should be aware of? Like how quick can a file be turned around, or what is the comfort um in ordering appraisal? How much lead time should they give you that be comfortable for your practice?
So at home value, we do track every single report and like the amount of business days. Our goal is 5 business days from the time of order.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest thing you can do when you place the order, put the date that you need the report by. Like a lot of the times people order it and all of a sudden they'll be calling and be like, I need this by tomorrow. And it's like, well, I didn't know you needed it by tomorrow. I was either A, having a hard time getting into the property, or B, I didn't realize this was more of a rush. And it just helps the communication so we
Yeah.
can kind of meet those expectations. But 5 business days is the standard.
Okay.
And then we do offer rush services up to like 24 hours, or it really depends. Like if you're going to need 24 hours on like a $6 million property, the answer is probably going to be no, because it's a little too complicated to just spit it out that quickly. But if it's
Exactly.
going to be something more entry level, for sure. But yeah, you can place the order and then click the rush box. And again, we've done it up to 24 hours. We do charge a premium.
Yep.
Uh, and that premium does fluctuate depending on how busy we are, kind of like an Uber surge kind of thing.
I was just about to say, yeah, it's similar to that, right? And and you really hit the nail on the head, right? One thing our agent partners should be aware of is the complexity of a file, because not every file is the same, especially in residential. Like you said, your standard stick box subdivision where a developer built and put up four floor plans and everything's the same. It's
Yeah.
pretty easy for you guys to have adjustments. But then if you're 15 minutes outside of a major area, they've got an executive parcel of 3 acres and a 6,000-7,000 square foot home, coming in between 5-6 million. That's a completely different beast and animal to have to look at, because comparables, you're gonna have to dig a little bit deeper and try to get that in the same sort of area without going too far outside of the norm. And that's where, again, my comment on the adjustments may be
Totally.
reflected because of location on the other properties, right?
Yeah, I'm actually
Certain
writing a
subject.
report like that now. It's a 7,000 square foot home. The highest sales are all 3,000 square feet. So now I have to
Yeah.
either use older sales or go back in time, or I mean, change neighborhoods. And
Yeah.
so now we're cross-referencing a bunch of different things and trying to make it fit, and or at least have an understanding where we can conclude ourselves accordingly. And
Exactly.
it's very time consuming once we start to deviate from, again, like a
Oh, yeah.
conformity
Yeah.
issue you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. I mean, it hasn't happened many times in my career, but in the latter probably 5 years, you know, being back in the lender space and broker time before that, I've had one appraisal company come back and said, I can't complete the report because there's just not enough data and historical sales to do this report. So do it with you what you want, but I'm sorry, but I can't, and that's great. That's a sign of a good firm saying, hey, listen, I've looked. There's nothing I can do to get this report done, and I don't want to just put stuff on a page just to put something out, right? So it's
Yeah,
kind of nice.
we have anything that's over 2.5, 2.5 million, we have an additional CRA look at it,
Okay.
and we go, hey, like, did we miss anything? Because now we're
Yeah.
just starting to deal with big money, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, we don't want to be making mistakes, so we have an extra set of eyes check it out. And when we do get into unique properties, I do have conversations with the broker, because expectations versus the reality of what I can justify are sometimes leagues apart. And so we had those conversations in advance of just like, hey, you guys are expecting 5 million, the highest sale in the neighborhood is 3 million.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to get there. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what we do to bridge that gap.
Yeah, and that leads to a great point too. So our agents, partners out there, if you've got a unique situation like that, don't be afraid to pick up the phone the appraiser that you're dealing with, whether it's HVI or anybody else out there, and say, listen, I've got this property. I'm kind of concerned. I maybe pull the purview or something to give me an idea of where a property may come in, just to kind of get the conversation going. But pick up the phone and say, hey, Damian, I've got this file. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with the area? I'm not wanting in a lot of detail, but am I going to be wasting your time and my time? Like, do you think this would come in roughly around this? And it's going to be a yes or a no. And if it's a yes, well, then you carry on, you go back to your client, say, listen, hey, we've had this brief conversation. Looks like could be, but in order to really know, we're going to have to pay for the appraisal to be done, and we'll know, we'll kind of go from there. So again, with anything, don't be afraid to pick up a phone and phone one of your industry partners.
That's a great point. I welcome these conversations. I think conversations lead to growth or problem solving, where everyone feels like they were treated fair. And
Yeah,
you brought up purview, which is another great topic. People like to bring up purview. I do think it's nice to have these tools to get a quick look of maybe what something could be,
exactly.
but it's not sophisticated at this point in time. And they're also using deals that are closed on only. They're not using things that are actively selling now. So tends to be a 60 to 90-day lag period.
I guess
And
I should have put a disclaimer in there.
yeah,
This isn't, but when I was brokered, I used it as a gauge. Okay, I have an idea of what the property's worth.
totally.
How is this going to come? Okay, am I going to make that phone call to the appraiser to get that second hey, or am I going to say it ain't going to happen? Let's just move on and wish
Totally.
wish the client all the best type of thing, right? So,
Yeah.
but
I agree.
yeah,
And there's also Health Sigma too, is another one that people are
yeah,
using
yeah,
to find sales. And I think Health Sigma comes up with numbers too. But again, you take everything with a grain of salt.
exactly.
You
It-
know, apples to apples comparisons, if they are available,
yeah,
the appraiser will target that versus the system, which kind of just takes data and comes up with
yeah.
something.
It's just one of those little nuggets of tools that just helps an agent, work a file properly before maybe engaging the appraiser
For
going
sure.
forward, right? Um, there have definitely been some changes, to your side of the business. I know out west there's been some. Are there any changes that are coming down the pipeline from the Appraisal Institute for the Eastern appraisers, like some of the ones that have come out from the West here? I know before we got on here, you mentioned that there had been some changes that some of our agent partners may not be aware of. So maybe shed some light on that.
Yeah, I just attended a professional practice seminar for the appraisers, and this year nothing too crazy, but last year, and a lot of people aren't aware, is the way we conduct market rent analytics is, it's not that it's different, it's just the Appraisal Institute has made it very clear that we're only doing market rent for authorized or registered units.
Okay.
So again, we can do the whole entire house, but if your house is broken down into apartments, those need to be registered with the city, and then we can do the market rent analysis.
Okay.
Now, in Toronto, and I'm not sure if it's the same out west, every other person, or 90% of the basement apartments in our city, are not registered. And that's just the reality of, life here.
Yeah.
And there was a point of time that we were doing market rents for these unregistered apartments, and we would do them hypothetically. If it was hypothetically legal, your
Right.
apartment could be worth $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month, or whatever it was. But now, again, it's not like a gray area. It's black and white. If
Yeah.
it's either registered and we're insured for it, or it's not registered and they will not provide us insurance on it. And they told us not to do those ones.
Yeah.
But if you are in the process of getting registered and are going through that process, we can do it, because now it's reasonable that someone is going to make it legal and they have
Right.
either drawings or applications with the city, and we can take those applications, include them in the report and say, hey, it looks like this is what they're doing. Hypothetically, when they do make this legal, now here's your number.
Yeah. Now, does that apply across Ontario completely?
That should be applying across the country as far as I know
Yeah.
it, but
Okay.
I could be wrong on that. But yeah, definitely across Ontario for sure.
Yeah.
And I know there's still appraisers that may be doing things that they're not aware that these rules have changed, but
Yeah.
last year, last January 2023, the Appraisal Institute came out with very concise statements saying
Yeah.
this is how it is going forward.
So that's an important thing to remember out there, our partners. If you've got a situation like this and you're needing that rental offset to help that file uh, get approved, best thing to do is have that conversation with the client and ensure that it is a registered unit before going through that step, because you don't want to get all the way down that road and then all of a sudden find out that suite in that basement is not registered, and all of a sudden now that file is not doable, or you have to look to an alternative channel while they are getting that registered, so you can take them to that B or A lender. So definitely a great point to keep in mind on there. I've had a couple questions sort of come up and all that. One thing that we get all the time as a lender, conversations I have with agents out there is, what's our book look like? Meaning, a breakdown. So what are you seeing a lot of right now in regards to how many files are you guys doing as purchases or refinances, or maybe a division of the property, subdividing off chunks of land on larger parcels? Like, sort of what's
Mhm.
your mix that you're seeing come across the desks of your company?
The majority of the business we get, I'd say, I mean, if we were to classify it in two categories, lending and non-lending, we have a non-lending department that deals with, marital dissolution and all that kind of
Okay,
stuff.
good to know.
That's the state. Um, that might represent less than 10%, maybe around 5% of our business. And then the rest of it's financing or lending purposes. Um, and I would say secondary financing has become like the biggest component of what it is we do. And I think it's because we do specialize in this marketplace where if you are getting secondary finance, you're going to possibly a private or, some kind of alternative.
Yeah.
And that seems to be kind of where we've fallen into. Purchases, we do a chunk of purchases, but the refinance is a much bigger part of what it is that we do. And I just think that in this day and age, people have a higher appetite for debt,
Yeah.
and that's kind of almost how you get ahead. So whether you're refinancing to improve your house or get your business going or buy another property, the majority of what we do is refi. And again, the secondary mortgages has become such a big part of what we do.
Yeah.
It's from 2020 before the pandemic till now. It's like I noticed like there's always a request. Oh, can we change this to secondary finance? And we're even
Yeah.
doing third mortgages now.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a fun game.
I bet.
They're, they're starting to come. They're starting to come down the pipe, and we're starting to see the third mortgages come in, and that just might be a result of interest rates being so high that like people
Yeah.
are kind of forcing themselves into a different window to kind of either consolidate debt or kind of maybe restructure their finances to kind of keep their house going.
Yeah. And then that whole brings in a whole other kettle of fish as far as,
Yeah.
affordability, suitability, et cetera, right? That.
Hmm.
Um, we all know that, the last few years have been trying, we went through a global pandemic and whatnot. And that definitely shifted the spots in Ontario where people were living. I mean, prior to pandemic, we saw a lot of people in the heart of Toronto, the heart of GTA, and as we kind of came through it, but yet, the old standards weren't still in play, and people were saying, "Hey, I'm going to find a house rather than live in an apartment or whatever, and I'm going to create an office, and we're going to kind of get out of the concrete jungle and find ourselves a smaller little area."
Mm-hmm.
So that definitely changed the hot pockets in Ontario. And I know, having conversations with, other appraisal firms and our agent partners and stuff, we're starting to see a little bit of reverse about that. People now wanting to go back downtown and have that lifestyle that they had prior to the pandemic. So can you kind of identify or, let everybody know sort of where the hot pockets are right now, maybe where the cold pockets are, where things had cooled off since all that change?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if there's any like cool pockets, but I would say that during the pandemic, like you talked about, a lot of people are moving out of the city. And if you want to talk about a city that experienced exponential value growth was Brampton, let's say.
Yeah.
Um, I remember doing one in Brampton for $1 million and then seeing it sell, 2 years later or a year and a half later for $2 million. Okay, so now it's doubled in value in this short period of time. Brampton's probably been hit the hardest out of like the boroughs of Toronto.
Yeah.
And if you look at what the prices were to where they are now, it's taken like a much bigger hit than the rest of Toronto. If you go into, let's say, central Toronto or any of the C zoned listings on the Toronto MLS, um, statistically, it's down not that much from
Okay.
2022 height versus
Yeah.
Brampton, which is down like 25%. Toronto could be down anywhere between 5 and 10. So anything that's like inner city or within like that has a good proximity to the core, it's more like a juggernaut. It's just like kind of slow and steady. You're not getting these like crazy accelerations, but you're also not getting this. It's just steady this way,
Right.
and not so wavy like we see in the suburbs. Is a little bit more kind of up and down again, kind of depending on the pocket. And some of the ones that were even further out of Toronto, I've seen more so because they started building so much new construction. The prices they were charging for new construction homes in, let's say, like these Caledon areas or these more rural areas, they were charging $2 million. Those appraisals are coming in nowhere close at this point in
Yeah.
time, and that isn't so much at the like it's market is part of it, but like the builders were forecasting these prices.
Yeah.
So not only were they're charging a big premium at that point in time, which was already higher than it is now. So you have the premium on top of the market dropping. So that's where you get like this big gap in between some of that new construction product in the more remote areas around Toronto.
Yeah. We seen, last year, some of our agent partners, have hard conversations with clients saying, listen, your pre-sale is not going to come anywhere close to this. You've got two options. You've already put, let's say, 50, 60, 100 grand down. You go
Mm-hmm.
try to close on this, you're gonna lose another 100 or so. We're starting to see that. I've had conversations as early as last week, where they're seeing clients in the same situation. Like, kiss that 60 grand goodbye,
Yeah.
because if you try and go ahead and close, you're going to lose another 200,000. So,
Yeah.
you know, let the developer take the 60 and walk away and just say, hey, that was a bad investment. Like, you picked the wrong stock, and you,
Totally.
you move on from it, because 60 is better than 260 loss, right? So we're
That
starting to see that again in
I,
conversation.
I I think the mortgage agents, I mean, a lot of people buy these new homes and, between 2008 and let's say 2017 or whatever, it was like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You didn't really have to think about it. The value was going to be higher. Everyone, that's how people would talk. Oh, just go buy a new one and it'll be worth it in 4 years.
Yeah.
That's not
Because
the
it's been
case
that, like you
anymore.
said, it's been that nice, steady, growth, right?
Mhm.
Not like, you know,
And
straight up.
also, I think builders really started forecasting pricing more into it because they saw year over year all these people selling for much higher
Oh,
prices.
of course.
And so the mortgage agents, listening, take the opportunity to educate your client and say, hey, new construction isn't a safe bet anymore. Let's make sure because we don't know what the value is going to be when it closes, right?
Exactly.
So where is that value in comparison to the homes now? and
Yeah.
you can kind of see where that gap is, and again, trust your professionals to give you guidance,
Yeah. Oh,
versus just going
exactly.
to the builder.
And to add on to that point you've meant on new construction, what Damien I think is really indicating is new construction, like you're going in and it is a subdivision, like I mentioned earlier, where the developer's gone in, bought a chunk of land. They're putting up 4 floor plans to choose from and a couple different color palettes, and you're buying it. That construction is a lot different than you finding a lot in the middle of, GTA, and you're building a home and you've hired a contractor to build a home for you. That's completely different. Correct me if I'm wrong from what you were saying, is that those large developments like that,
Hmm.
developers on that scale are hedging. They're going to their suppliers. They're saying, listen, I need X tons of wood for this, and they're pre-buying in bulk. So
Hmm.
when they're buying and hedging on an increasing market, and then things take a tumble, they're already locked into that high prices.
Hmm.
And those suppliers want that high price, or there's going to be substantial penalties, right? Because they've
Hmm.
gone out and secured that lumber. So it's that trickle effect, especially on that large construction. And I think that's sort of, a good point to kind of bring out to our agents when they're talking to clients, or have clients saying, hey, I'm looking at new construction, how far out or when did this project start? Because that could really dictate that end result, right?
Oh, for sure, and it also applies to condos too,
Yeah.
and especially the downtown core. Builders were forecasting $1,500 to $1,700 a square foot, and unless you're in a primo building at this point, you're not getting it.
Yeah.
So it's just,
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of people are out a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of want to sort of take a little step back to one of the first questions and indications on your company being a little bit unique in that way, and how you guys operate, because really you're sort of more of a boutique company
Mhm.
that have created a lot of these partnerships that you've, I don't like the word farm out, maybe let's call co-broker a file out to another
Yeah.
firm that's more specific. Because I know we had this conversation at the conference, like you can't be everywhere. In this day and age, with trying to find appraisers and bring them on and train them and do that, it's easier to kind of go out and say, hey, listen, I found a like-minded another appraisal firm, let's say out in London. We don't have
Hmm.
anybody in our team out in London. Let's go to them and say, hey, we've got this concept, we'd love to partner up and use your services,
Hmm.
and we kind of go from there. How does that report process look like for you guys? Because obviously when you're doing this, and if you're not a lender or you're not familiar with using HVI, when us as a lender get a report, it does come from HVI. So they're the ones that get it, digest it, sign off on it, and then send it out on your behalf. But they may not be the firm that have gone out and actually reviewed the property. So what does that look like when a broker, let's say, orders a file in London?
It's a great question. We don't actually review the report of
Okay.
the other firms, because we do administer the deal, or we do intake the request for the deal. Sometimes we get dragged into conflict resolution. We do suggest that you speak to that appraisal firm,
Okay.
and also too, let's say you order an appraisal, and then we give it to someone, because it's not in our area or the home value area of coverage, so we sub it out to a different company. You need to double check too that the lender you're working with will take that file, because again, like, it isn't our signature that goes on it. Gord has done it a couple times, where in order to fund it, Gord had to review the file and
Yeah.
also put his signature on it, just to give that lender a comfort that, like, it did come through home value.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, though, areas of coverage are areas of coverage for a reason. We know those areas.
Yeah.
Our appraisers live in those areas. We have 65 at this point in time, and we assign work in accordance to where people live, because people know the geography around where they live, and you're going to get a better product at that point. But in regards to the subbing out of the work, it's it each we don't really interfere with too much with what the other appraisal companies want to put out.
Yeah.
They clearly deal with the same type of lenders, or that's the mentality behind this. And
Yeah, you're partnering up with like-minded companies, right?
exactly. And
Yeah.
so like we've obviously seen their work and what they put out, and we rely on their judgment at that point.
Yeah. Awesome.
Did that answer your question, or?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
because people may be aware of the way HVI. I mean, you're not a small firm by any stretch at 65, you know, appraisers. I mean, that's a fairly substantial firm. But like you said, you focus on the areas where your staff live and they know their
Mhm.
expertise. And it's just like any agent out there. Hey, listen, I only deal in a business, but so they may bring in a partner to deal with that alt or that MIC deal because they're not as familiar with that stuff yet. So they kind of use that judgment. Sort of the same thing with you guys, right? You kind of stick to your areas of expertise and then partner up with like-minded companies in other areas. That's easier rather than looking for a merger acquisition and kind of bring in agents that way or
Yeah,
appraisers
that's
that way. I mean, so
well said.
um, what sort of misconception out there do you hear about from agents that you kind of want to shed some light on, whether you know reports, view on valuations, etc. That's anything that you kind of come across that you guys talk at the water cooler on, saying, "Hey, geez, I got another, this or that." What kind of misconceptions are out there that you'd like to shed some light?
Yeah, I think like the big misconception is, oh, the appraisal's low. The appraisal doesn't represent like true market value. It's like I understand everyone's stance on that, and as someone who deals with a lot of different phone calls at home value, trying to explain how we got to where we got to is something that I've learned to kind of specialize in. But we are trying to reflect the data. And it's not something where we're not trying to come in at market value. We want to come into market value. I've come in higher than something sold before. It's not
Yeah,
like we're always lower. I've seen, I'm like, oh, I did that house. Oh, you know what? It sold $50,000 less than what I came in, or whatever the situation is.
yeah,
I've seen the reverse, and I've seen myself be spot on. But our perspective though is we're taking in data, and then we're taking it down component by component of what makes up a house, and then we do analytics on that data.
yeah,
And a lot of the times, people talk to realtors, and having a real estate license, and I don't really participate that much, but it's a different hat. And so now I don't have to like get technical with the data. And my job as a realtor is to get the highest price. And I'm trying to
yeah,
attract clients, and I want to be optimistic, optimistic, optimistic. Where
yeah,
as an appraiser, I need to see consistency in data.
yeah,
And so if I don't see that consistency, we got the highs, we got the lows. I want to have stuff that I can explain, whether it's the mortgage agent or the lender calling, because we get calls on both sides.
yeah. Oh,
And
of course.
it's a conversation of, hey, this was my rationale, this was my thought process. And if we do our job properly, not everyone has to agree with the number, but it should make sense after I'm
Yeah,
done explaining how we got there. So I guess the misconception is that we want to be low, or homeowners always think their home is worth X or Y. And I'm no different. I own
yeah,
a home, and I feel the same way. So like
exactly.
I completely get it. So I think that would be kind of the biggest thing. We want to be accurate. We want to be right. We want to provide something that people can feel great about lending on, and also reading it and saying, hey, you know what? This makes sense.
Yeah, consistency really. Like you already said it. Consistency and the way you guys, put out reports makes a big difference to all the parties involved.
One more point. Also, as an appraiser, we look backwards at things, right? So we're looking
Yeah.
at what sold, right? So
Mhm.
when the market's moving, so let's say back in the day when the market was crazy and moving, 30 points a year, 40 points a year, um, we're looking back at sales. So we can't forecast what the next crazy number is going to be.
Right.
So we only have the data that's there. And so whether you're helping your clients make decisions as to when they want their appraisal, you need to have an understanding of kind of where you are when you need your appraisal, especially with the purchases. If the market's on the move, get a longer closing. So you know, the appraiser has time to catch up with the comparables that may come up afterwards that represent the same amount
Exactly.
paid or whatever. But anyways, that's just a little bit of a difference in terms of perspective of looking backwards versus looking forwards.
Yeah. And just for those that might not have the experience in reading appraisals to level of some of your other colleagues, couple options. Sit down with a colleague that has been in the business a little longer and has maybe have a different view. Sit down and pick their brain on how they go through the appraisal report, much like I mentioned earlier, on how I where I start, and then I kind of go back, or pick up the phone. I'm sure Damian and somebody on the team, or one of their partners out there, would be more than happy to grab a coffee, and you could then go through and ask questions on a report, so you get a better understanding, because at the end of the day, it just helps everybody involved in the transaction, if you have that understanding of what's gone into the report, like we've talked about today.
I actually have a presentation that I've made, and I've made it to a number of mortgage agents, and I'm
Oh,
happy to make it to your team. If you have
perfect.
a team, we can customize it, but just the basics
Yeah,
of what it is that we're doing, and what are the scary things that we're gonna like that may be in there, and how do you identify the scary things that a lender may not like
yeah,
when they're done reading our report. So at least you're going in, and I think that mortgage agents not knowing if there's a headache and the lender doesn't like something, and if you don't know about it, you don't seem like a professional. You seem like like you're just putting this thing together.
yeah,
But when you come in and you know already kind of where the hiccups are, it builds better relationships to the people that are giving you money, because they're going to feel like, hey, this person actually knows all the problems and wants to problem solve them, versus not knowing kind of what's
yeah.
happening.
They've taken the time to address. I just did a presentation a couple of weeks ago at Camla with industry buddy Riza Fisgard, and we were talking about the do's and don'ts, and one of the things that we talked about were being prepared when you're talking to the lender and knowing your file inside and out, especially in a day of where we got a lot of people. I mentioned co-brokering. Oh, I don't know that, and they have to go and phone that broker that gave them the deal to work on. Know the details of the file before you talk to your lender, because like you mentioned, it goes a long way in the perception of your relationship with that lender. Doesn't matter whether it's A, B, C, or D in this industry. Everybody wants that transparency on it. We are going to end off this great conversation. Again, thank you for it. What one great things happened in your life, your family's life, over the last year?
I got engaged this year, and I'm getting
Oh,
married this summer. So it's been a busy spring preparing for all this kind of
I
stuff. But
bet. Big congratulations.
thank you very much. She's actually an appraiser at Home Value now. So I was brave enough to take on a spouse at work here, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's she started a new career, and we're excited.
Oh,
So it's
awesome. That's a great way to go into the summer and you know finish off 24 with a new bride and a new life. So again, I truly thank you for taking some time today and enlightening our agent partners out there in Ontario and what's going on in the market. And again, if you're needing an appraisal for your next file, don't be afraid to pick up that phone or find their portal, make that report with HVI, because they are a great partner of ThreePoint out east there, and we couldn't be happier with that. So thanks again, Damian. All the best, and I'll see you at that next industry event.
awesome, man. Thank you so much.
All right, cheers.
Cheers.